Episode 173 of CppCast with guest Adi Shavit, recorded October 31st, 2018. This episode of CppCast is sponsored by BackTrace, the turnkey debugging platform that helps you spend less time debugging and more time building. Get to the root cause quickly with detailed information at your fingertips. Start your free trial at backtrace.io/CppCast. In this episode, we discuss more papers headed to the C++ San Diego meeting. And we talk to Adi Shavit. Adi talks to us about his spooky C++ bestiary and the salami method for cross-platform development. Welcome to episode 173 of CppCast, the first podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Rob. How are you doing?
Doing okay. It is Halloween, so we have I don't think it's going to be very spooky, but I was going to say an extra spooky episode of CppCast today. I don't think we're
maybe
ever
a slightly spooky episode.
Maybe slightly spooky. I am probably going to go trick-or-treating with my kids right after we finish recording. So
I will be sitting in my house giving out candy.
Yeah, no one comes to my house for candy because we're at the very end of a cul-de-sac, so they just don't make it that far down the street, it seems.
We expect 200 to 300 kids.
That's a lot of kids.
It's a lot.
Yeah. You have enough candy for them?
Maybe.
Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to share today, Jason?
Yeah, so I don't recall if I've ever mentioned this on the air, but I am giving a class at C++ on C, so that is official. And am speaking at C++ on C, so that's Phil Nash's conference coming up here in February.
Awesome. So
my class there will be on ConstExpr, and if you've seen like the several talks that I've given on ConstExpr, this is like more practical, like how you can actually take advantage of ConstExpr in your organization to get real world performance benefits and better code.
And this is the first time that they're doing C++ on C, or that Phil Nash is hosting it. So is it going to be a 1-day pre-conference or a 2-day class?
1-day pre-conference and then 2-day conference.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. And the conference schedule is fully up and online now too.
Right, and that's at cpponc.uk, but we'll, of course, put that in the show notes. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool. So at the top of the episode, I'd like to read a piece of feedback. This week, we got a tweet from Tom on Twitter saying he downloaded the C++ quiz thanks to the recommendation from CppCast, and it might have the most passive-aggressive hints I've ever seen. I think my feelings are actually a little hurt. And I think I saw the same type of hints when first checking out this on the website. And yeah, if you ask for a hint, one of the ones that apparently will give you is, have you really thought through the question? Yeah, so that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's not very nice. I'm like, yes, just show me the answer.
Yeah, it's probably better than the other Twitter account from the same guy. The affirmative CPP Twitter account.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show as well. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. Joining us today is Adi Shavit. Adi is an entrepreneur, speaker, consultant, software architect, and a computer vision and machine learning expert with an emphasis on real-time applications. He specializes in building cross-platform, high-performance software combined with high production quality and maintainable code bases. Adi is the founder of the Core C++ user group in Israel. Having worked on proprietary software for most of his career, his most visible contribution to the world of open source software is, somewhat ironically, the design of the OpenCV logo. Adi, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here.
Okay, I now have to go to the OpenCV website.
Yeah, I did the same
and
thing.
see see this logo. Yeah. So are you planning to move into graphic design? Is that your plan?
No, I don't know. I've been designing logos occasionally for a long time, and this is just a side project, side hobby.
That's fun. That's pretty clean and straightforward logo, yeah. So did they ask you to do it, or did you just submit one and they accepted it, or what?
Well, I actually did it back in 2006, so there weren't that many developers in OpenCV, and I was just I was one of the contributors to the library, and I said, okay, we need a proper logo, and I came up with this. I sent it to the top developer, and he said, oh, that's really cool. And it's sort of stuck, so there it is.
Okay. And you've been
cool.
using OpenCV in your professional work?
Yeah, I've been using it more or less consistently and continuously since it was in beta back in the year 2000.
Oh, wow.
It was, and it's gone through a lot of changes, some more stable periods and some more rapid development. But today it's probably one of the most popular computer vision libraries available.
I think I've looked at the API once or twice, but haven't actually used it myself. So maybe in the interview we'll have to ask you about what you're using it for.
Yeah, we can dig into that some more.
Okay.
Okay, well, Adi, we have a couple news articles to discuss. Feel free to comment on any of these, and then we'll start talking to you more about maybe OpenCV and some other work you've been doing, okay?
Sure.
Okay, so this first one is a kind of somewhat funny post on the C++ subreddit asking what's going to happen in the year 2098, 80 years from now, with C++. I guess someone did the math, and if we continue on this cycle of a release every 3 years, we will be due to have a C++ 2098 version. But of course, you can't just call it C++ 98 because we already have C++ 98.
Yeah, it's actually bothers me ever so slightly that we have a Y2K problem. Like, I have thought about this before, too. Like, I can't lexicographically sort the C++ version numbers.
It does seem like maybe they should have thought of this with C++ 11. Like, it should have just been C++ 2011. Maybe.
Yeah.
They
probably should have been.
Versioned it, like semantic versioning.
Yeah.
I think you could call it 98.2 or something.
Yeah. Some of these suggestions are like, well, maybe it'll be ++C ++98. Because by then we'll actually have a sequence point there or something like.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was a fun read. I'm responsible for putting this in the list. I do think you should like go and read some of the comments though, because some of them are hilarious. Like clearly, the undefined behavior will cause a fracture in space time, and we'll have multiple universes or whatever. Like, yeah,
yeah. Okay. The next one is new release of JSON for modern C++ library. It's up to version 3.30. And it looks like one of the major new features is just that they added support for GCC 4.8, right, Jason?
I wasn't even paying that close attention to what the new features were. I just wasn't even that familiar with this library, but it seems like it is like everyone's favorite JSON C++ library. It's got 11,000 stars on GitHub, and I was only vaguely aware of it.
Yeah, it must be a good library then.
Yeah.
You haven't had a chance to use it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Adi.
No, I said I don't do a lot of JSON processing, but I did have a chance of using it some time ago, and it's actually, the interface is actually pretty amazing and very. On the one hand, it feels very natural, but it's kind of difficult to be natural in C++ and do the JSON thing. So I think it's very cool.
Right.
Very cool. Okay, and then the next article we have is the announcement from Meeting C++. Obviously, we were talking a lot about this last week with Jens, but the full schedule is now online. I don't believe the full schedule is out when we talked to Jens. I think just the keynotes were out, right, Jason?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Any highlights you wanted to point out in the schedule this year?
No, I do find it interesting that Andre's keynoting. Mm-hmm. Because we covered his retirement from C++.
Yeah, and what's the title of his talk again?
The Next Big Paradigm.
Next Big Paradigm, right.
Oh, that's right. We did discuss that briefly in the last couple of weeks, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm kind of curious
to see what that's going to be about. Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever have a chance to go to Meeting C++, Adi?
No. Actually, this year has been the first year where I've actually gone to C++ conferences, except Code Dive actually at the end of last year. So I've been to several this year, and I'll be at C++ on C. I'll be speaking there in February, but Meeting C++ is the one I skipped this time.
So what are the several that you have been to or will be going to?
I was at Code Dive in Poland back last November, and I'll be there again next week, actually, giving 2 talks. I've been to NDC Oslo and NDC TechTown, and just a couple weeks ago at CppCon.
Where's NDC TechTown?
It's in a town called Königsberg. I hope I'm probably mispronouncing the Norwegian way of saying it. It's
probably close.
2 hours out from Oslo by train.
Okay. Wow. So that's a pretty full conference schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. I decided to go the full Monty this year.
So what have your thoughts been so far?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, there's a lot. I joined the C++ Slack back at the end of 2006 when there were like just a couple hundred people and started.
2016?
2016, you mean, right?
16? What did I say? Yeah.
You said 2006 when we were both slightly confused for a minute.
Sorry, no, 2016. And, I went on Twitter and started talking to some C++ folks and that I've been chatting with for a few years online, and then you go to these conferences and suddenly meet everybody face to face, and it's like people you've never met, but you feel like you know them, some of them, like good old friends, so it's actually fabulous.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last article I have is from Jean-Hid Manid, who we had on the show pretty recently. And he's talking specifically about 2 papers that will be discussed at the upcoming San Diego meeting. And this is about a topic which we actually talked a little bit about last week, I believe, with references with std optional, right, Jason?
Yes.
Yeah, so what was your take on this?
Well, my initial take was John Heed's articles have very high quality.
Yeah.
He did a ton of research into this, and he uses the monad word, which, makes some of us, our eyes just glaze over immediately as soon as we see monad in an article, right? But, it's like, I didn't realize that there's something like 20 different public implementation of optional out there. So he discusses, we're just in this crazy world where we have to come to some sort of, I don't know,
consensus.
Have to come together somehow so that we're not dealing with incompatible things that are all called optional.
Right. How do you think this will turn out? Do you think we'll go the way of boost optional, which I think is what we all kind of were leaning towards last week when we talked about it?
I have no idea, honestly. I'm curious if Adi has any comments on this.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sometimes stuck working with C++ 11 or begging people to allow me to use C++ 11 features on some legacy code. I really don't have a strong opinion about optional with references yet.
Right.
I think I want them just because they make sense, but I don't want to join into the flame war here.
Takes the fun out of it.
Yeah.
You should do just at the next couple conferences you speak at, just do straw polls, in the middle of the talk. Just be like, now, should optional have reference support or not? And just see, and then just continue on with the rest of your talk and see what happens.
Well, I think in one of my CppCon talks I did mention regular void, which was it's also mentioned in the article, and I think it's similarly controversial, I think.
No, regular void needs to happen.
Yeah, I'm totally for regular void. Yeah, go regular void.
Yeah, we should see if Matt has any updates on that. I don't think there has been any update on it.
It's been a while since we talked about that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we actually seriously discussed it since we had Matt Calabrese on.
Right.
Which was a long time ago now.
Well, Adi, as we said, we're recording this episode on Halloween, and you actually put out a special blog post a year ago on Halloween with C++ Bestiary. For listeners who maybe didn't see that article, could you describe it for us?
Yeah, sure. So when you hang around C++ folks for enough time, you start hearing all these really, really strange and funky names, like very esoteric things that you start wondering and you go searching for. And not all of them are C++ specific, but some of them are extremely colorful. So I was collecting some of these. I thought, okay, these can make a really fun blog post because most people don't actually know all of these terms. Neither did I, obviously. So I just collected them, and it seemed like a very appropriate thing to do as a, it's just a blog post with a list of unrelated items, and the only thing really connecting them together is just they're very colorful and figurative, like a creature-like names. And that's what I did in that blog post. I had, about 12 or 15 items with strange names. And each one had an emoji and a nice vintage comics cover, which is somehow related to the name, just to make fun, to make it a fun and humorous thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun article. And I'm looking at this list right now, trying to decide, do we want to try to go over each of them? It might take a while if we did that.
Yeah, it might take a while. Do you have a favorite from the list, though?
Actually, I think my favorite is abominable function types. I think these are really, it's a very, very strange feature of the type system, which sort of allows you to declare a function prototype that is CVRef qualified. And you can't actually declare a function like that. You can only declare methods, but you can still do this forward declaration and give it a name. It's a really strange and kind of, I think I had a quote here from Alistair Meredith. He said, there is a dark corner of the type system that is little known other than to compiler writers. So, and I think he's actually trying to get rid of it, but it's not that easy. So I wasn't familiar with this one, and it's very, very esoteric, and I hope people don't actually use it ever. So if you see it in code review, somebody needs to have a serious talk.
So this is something then that at least some members of the standard committee consider to be a bug, effectively.
I don't think this particular item is actually a bug. It's more like it's just a strange feature of the type system, I guess.
Okay.
I'm not an expert. You probably have to ask Alistair Meredith, and he can give you a lot more details. Most of the things I actually collected there are many other CppCast guests are much more of an expert about them than I am. Yeah, but I think the thing about it is that it shows. First of all, it shows a lot of humor. Because some of these items are actually mentioned in the international standards. You go and read this tome, which is supposedly very official, very formal, very rigorous. And you actually have to pay 60 euros if you want to buy the formal thing. And then you start reading it and you come across all these strange and funny and funky names. I think it's really cool. And despite being very esoteric and humorous, there are a lot of opportunities to learn about some of these things. And even when I gave this talk back at NDC TechTown, I've had some of them, keynote speakers come up to me then and say, I actually learned something here. I didn't know that. So okay.
So is there anything in here that you ultimately did decide in your research or whatever in writing the article that actually is a bug that people want to get rid of in the language, just out of curiosity?
Well, I'm not exactly sure it's a bug, but if you look at duck typing comes from dynamic languages like JavaScript or even many, many older languages. And it isn't actually used in C++, but it does C++ when you're using templates, you do use static duck typing, where you don't know the name. So it comes back in a different form in C++, and this is something that people are trying to get rid of, and basically that's what concepts are trying to do. So I'm not sure, it's not exactly a bug, but it is an aspect of the type system that should or could or would be improved by an alternative warning system, right? Or
more like constrained duck typing or something. Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the whole discussion about whether the concepts we're getting are actually the concepts we want, but that's another story. And I must say that some of them are actually features; they're not really bugs. Like I talk about flying saucers, which is the spaceship operator, which is extremely cool, which is not really something to be scared of. It's actually very, very, we're very welcomed, and it has some amazing defaults. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, because I love operator overloading. Sorry, there I said it.
You love yes, operator overloading is definitely a good thing that definitely has its uses. I'm not going to argue with you on that one at all, for sure. Just as long as you're not overloading like the comma operator or the logical OR.
Yeah, but C++ is a language that allows you to blow your foot off, right? So, I mean, you have to be smart and you have to be mature and adult about what you're doing. So if your intent is to confuse something, so C++ is probably the best language to do that. But if you're trying, but most of us aren't, right? So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned that you gave a talk based on this blog post too. Is that right?
Yeah, I've given it several times, and I usually, one of the first things I say is I guarantee that everybody will learn something. And that's if I give it in a small meetup, that's generally true. And then I had the chance to give it at NDC TechTown and at CppCon, where I was slightly more reserved about saying that. But in CppCon, actually the reception was amazing because I didn't give the version that's in the blog post. Actually, most of the material for the CppCon talk was new material. And the thing is that like most of the people who are quoted in the future blog post with the new material were actually sitting in the audience.
Oh, that's awesome. It
was super awesome, and it was very friendly and very fun. And if somebody had a question, so I said, "Yeah, hey, this guy sitting over here, you go and ask him because I have no idea. I'm just quoting him." So it was great fun and fantastic reception. So it was very friendly.
So I think you just said that you were working on a new content to update this post. Is that right?
Yeah, I was planning on actually posting it tonight, but I just I was too busy these past few weeks ever since CppCon, and I just haven't had the chance to write it down. So I do have a whole bunch of new material, including stuff that I didn't even present at CppCon. Hopefully it won't wait until next Halloween, but it's probably going to be in the upcoming months. Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep our eye out for it then.
Okay.
I wanted to interrupt this discussion for just a moment to bring you a word from our sponsors. BackTrace is a debugging platform that improves software quality, reliability, and support by bringing deep introspection and automation throughout the software error lifecycle. Spend less time debugging and reduce your mean time to resolution by using the first and only platform to combine symbolic debugging, error aggregation, and state analysis. At the time of error, BackTrace jumps into action, capturing detailed dumps of application and environmental state. BackTrace then performs automated analysis on process memory and executable code to classify errors and highlight important signals such as heap corruption, malware, and much more. This data is aggregated and archived in a centralized object store, providing your team a single system to investigate errors across your environments. Join industry leaders like Fastly, Message Systems, and AppNexus that use BackTrace to modernize their debugging infrastructure. It's free to try, minutes to set up, fully featured with no commitment necessary. Check them out at backtrace.io/CppCast. I think you also gave a talk at CppCon this year about the salami method. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this is based on it. Basically, the salami method is an architecture or a way to structure software systems where you need to develop extremely cross-platform and target multiple different platforms. Because C++ today and C, the modern C++ developer often has to target multiple, very different types of platforms. So if you go to the lowest level, you have custom silicon, and then embedded systems, mobile systems, desktops, clouds, and even the browser today is effectively an actual platform if you're using mscripten or ASM.js or WebAssembly. And that's just like the hardware platforms in a sense. And you have multiple operating systems, and some of these target platforms, they have what I kind of ironically call the native languages. Because they call it native when they refer to the C, but really the native language, if it might be, let's say, Swift or Objective-C on iOS or Java on Android. So it's a really difficult. It's very easy to duplicate the work you're doing. You have multiple teams developing, and you're mixing business logic with platform-specific APIs, and your whole code becomes extremely difficult to maintain. So the salami method really, it takes its name by the fact that it slices such systems into extremely thin layers, where each one has a single responsibility, and it's very transparent and allows you to maintain control over your code. So it doesn't remove some of the ugliness of doing these platform-specific aspects and a lot of these problems, but it does try to keep the business logic in one, all the common code in the same place, and everything becomes much more maintainable.
Do you go so far as to even put like the different layers in different source subfolders or something like that?
I think that really depends on what combination of platforms you're targeting. So sometimes you actually have to implement all of the layers as separate files or separate folders or separate subsystems. More commonly, some of these layers won't actually be implemented as different layers in the code, but the aspects that they discuss are always there. There is no way around it. So, and even if you're using kind of these cross-platform frameworks, the person who implemented these frameworks should have considered all of these aspects as well. So the aspects are always there. It's like design patterns, you reify these aspects. You don't necessarily have this actual separation between all these layers, between each and every layer in every project you use.
Right.
I have a blog post about that as well on my blog, so kind of difficult to talk about it, but it's kind of a long read.
Yeah, I think I saw that blog post. It was sometime last year.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, January 4th, 2017.
Yeah.
Found it.
What types of apps have you built using this architecture?
Actually, I came to realize how to structure this code after working on several mobile apps that had to target both Android and iOS. And my clients they had two separate development teams. One was iOS and another one was Android, and they were trying to always chase each other and trying to fix bugs. One was in Java and another was in Objective-C. And basically, the whole point was to extract all the common information, the common data into like a core platform agnostic C++ core, and then only add additional wrappers on top of it. So I've actually worked on several apps that targeted both Android and iOS, and the same algorithmic code could actually be unit tested and run on desktops, and some of it actually became kind of a cloud service where it could handle hundreds of thousands of users in the server, and that was the exact same C++ code. Yeah,
that's cool.
And I've been working on some embedded systems, and again, even if you're targeting a very specific embedded system, often you want that code to be tested or simulated on desktops, for example. So, and this architecture really allows you to manage this code effectively.
That's definitely a huge benefit if you're able to, build the large parts of your mobile application as a desktop application. I'd imagine that makes things like unit testing, like you said, a lot easier.
Yeah. Usually when you're working that way, you can do all your unit testing on your desktop or whatever convenient system platform you're using. And then on the target app, you only need to do some sanity tests and the API tests. You don't need to do the actual unit tester because it's the same exact code. Of course, this is kind of an overgeneralization, and it really depends. But in general, it saves a lot of the trouble of developing and testing on the platform itself. And things like web browser development is also something. I've written apps that run on the desktop. We mentioned OpenCV, so I wanted to see if we can do actual real-time video manipulation in the browser. So this is not happening in a server. It's actually compiled into JavaScript or WebAssembly and running inside the browser. So the same code could do that.
So since you brought up OpenCV again, I'm curious if you've been using it in these mobile applications that you're talking about and what this application was where you compiled it for Emscripten, if you can talk about it.
Yeah, so I've been using OpenCV a lot over the last decade or more. And I've used it on mobile apps and on many desktop apps. In particular, for the browser, it was just I wanted to get to know Emscripten a little bit more a few years ago. And I wanted to show, after my Salami blog post, I wanted to show an example of how you actually use it. So I just wrote a simple color transformation app in OpenCV. It's just a few lines of code where you convert it to color space, change the hues of the video, and display the image. So I compiled that as a desktop app, and then I went through in my blog post over adding all of these layers to enable it to compile to inside essentially to a JavaScript application running inside an HTML web page. So it was just an experiment. I've written other browsers related stuff as well. So it's once you understand the pipeline, it's pretty much you just compile your code and it's hopefully just works. Up to anything that's C++ kind of thing. Toolchain, yeah.
That's very cool. So what other kinds of things can OpenCV be used for? Or what other kinds of things have you used it for?
Oh, wow. Well, OpenCV is huge. It's huge. It has everything from most of the basic image processing operations you would want, from managing images and regions inside images and applying all kinds of filters, linear filters, convolutions, that kind of basic stuff. And then it goes up to object detection, feature detection. And it integrates with more advanced deep learning systems these days. It's huge. And I think it's very, very useful for getting started with OpenCV, with any computer vision. So if you need to do computer vision, it's often easier to do it with OpenCV than going to prototype with MATLAB, for example, because the performance, a lot of the functions are optimized, hand optimized by the big companies for with assembly binaries. So it's very useful for prototyping, and unfortunately, it's not exactly C++ 11 yet. So some of the things kind of feel awkward these days. But most of the processing is still extremely fast, and relatively, when you get used to it, it's fine. It's not weird.
Is the library itself written in C++, just an older version, or is it written in C?
C and C++.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
So I'm thinking at this point we've mentioned monads, computer vision, and machine learning, and I'm about to call bingo here. I'm wondering what else we could talk about. Buzzword bingo,
How about drones and autonomous vehicles?
Hey, there you go. Are you doing work with those also with computer vision work?
Actually, I haven't done anything with drones, but I am working on a project involving autonomous driving.
That's cool. Is that like terrifying to work on?
Well, I'm doing a lot of algorithmic research, but yeah, the barrier, the requirements, the constraints are pretty high. But again, this is an industry that's just growing, and we're still at the very nascent phases, and there's a lot of redundancy. So most of the true self-driving cars you'll see in maybe 5 or 7 years, they'll have multiple different systems covering each other, and hopefully, of course, no system is perfect, just like a human driver is not perfect. So hopefully you have multiple different... basically, you'll have all types of sensors, from videos and LiDAR and radar and sonar and anything you can stick on a car that's not too expensive. Multiple compute units working, some of them from the sensor manufacturers, some of them from the car manufacturers. So it should be as safe as a regular driver. Sometimes more, probably occasionally less. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you also mentioned in your bio that you run or you founded the core C++ user group in Israel. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the user group community in Israel?
Okay. Well, I've been watching YouTube videos, listening to C++ podcasts, and hoping that somebody will come up with a C++ meetup here in Israel where I can actually go and meet some other C++ developers. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I decided, I went on Slack and I started chatting with Jens and John. And I said, how do you gauge interest in such a user group? And they said, because the meetup tools don't really allow you to do that. So they said, no, don't. Just start your meetup. So I think it was just a few days ago, 1 year ago, we just had the anniversary. I just went on Meetup, opened an account, and started a user group. I just chose a name and a random future date as the first kickoff meeting. And like within 24 hours, I had to upgrade my Meetup account because it was limited to 50 members. And I think we're approaching 600 members now.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, we've been having monthly meetups, and it's been amazing, really. Suddenly I'm meeting people there was no other way for me to meet, and we're thirsty, just like I was, kindred souls, that people are, we can watch YouTube videos, but we want to meet like local folks, and it's been amazing, and it's such a wonderful thing. So I recommend, if you're sitting in your office and hoping that somebody will start a meetup in your town, just go and
just do it.
And, yeah.
So 600 members is a lot. How many people actually come to your meetup?
Oh, significantly less. I think many members are not even in Israel. Many people just join meetup groups just, I guess, to know what's going on where. And the thing is that there's a large high-tech industry in Tel Aviv, in the Tel Aviv area, and another one in Jerusalem. But since Israel is a very small country, our sense of distance is also reduced. So people from Tel Aviv will extremely rarely ever go to a meetup in Jerusalem, and people in Jerusalem will rarely make the 50-minute drive up to Tel Aviv. So whenever I went to each one, they would say, "What? Seriously? You came all the way for the meetup?" So I'd say, "Yeah." So I decided that I'm actually not going to do our meetups in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, at least for the several at the begining. So we're alternating between two different places in between, hoping to get people from both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Of course, the effect is that many people from Tel Aviv neither from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are actually come. So the regular meetups have around 25 people, but it's arriving. But we always get new people, and it's growing slowly. We did have several meetups in Tel Aviv where we've seen over 60 people coming, which was pretty amazing. Yeah,
that's really good.
Our next meetup in November is also in Tel Aviv. So anyone listening and who's in the area, please come and join us.
I assume it does not overlap with C++ on C.
Well, C++ on C is in...
Oh, no, November, February. Man, I'm out of it today. Wow.
It won't overlap with C++ on C because I'll be at C++ on C. So
right.
Probably... And I generally come to all the meetups because somebody needs to organize them. And Michael, my co-organizer, is already doing such a big amount of work. We both need to be there.
Mm. That's cool. It sounds like a good growing community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you told us before the show that you have an announcement related to the user group. Is that right? For next year?
Yeah. I'm super excited about this. So, in the first presentation that I gave in my first meetup, so this was the presentation I prepared before I've met anybody who ever came to the meetup. I had like one slide with my goals for the meetup and another slide with stretch goals. Had like a long list of stretch goals going from the relatively obvious ones like recording the sessions and posting them online all the way to the most ambitious one. And the last one was an actual conference, a C++ conference. I became jealous of all the conferences worldwide and said, yeah, okay, that's like my ultimate stretch goal. And a few months ago, we had a meetup in Tel Aviv, which was extremely successful. And we started talking to, this was something organized by JFrog, actually. And they came up to us and they said, oh, wow, the meetup was amazing. And you got 60 people to come and stay up until 10 p.m. at the meetup. And let's do something more. And I said, okay, sure, let's do a conference. So they said, sure, let's see what we can do. Let's go for it. And we started the ball rolling, and we're actually going to have a conference. It's going to call the Core C++ 2019. Going to be next year. I'm super excited about this. It's a two-day, two-track conference with one pre-conference training workshop and another half-a-day post-conference activities. It's going to be in the Academic College of Tel Aviv, which is a beautiful, beautiful campus. And it's going to happen on May 14th to May 17th. So it's about a week after C++ Now, which is kind of maybe a problem for some speakers, but hopefully not too much of a problem. The weather in Tel Aviv is amazing in May. So you have sunny beaches, but it's not too hot. There's lots to see. Of course, Israel is a great place to visit if you've never been, and even if you have been, there's tons to see. So yeah, and there's when we were in both me and Michael, my co-organizers, we both gave talks at CppCon, and we started talking informally to a lot of people, and there's a huge interest, and people are really excited. So I'm super excited and really happy. So yeah. Come to Israel, and we'll have an amazing conference.
So, I guess obvious question is: are you looking for speakers? You have call for speakers out.
We are looking for speakers. The call for speakers is out. We're gonna post the website, the URL of the conference on the show notes, right?
Oh yeah,
it's
corecpp.org.
So it's corecpp.org. And there's a call for speakers, and we'd love to have you. And you guys in particular, of course.
Oh, I will definitely submit a talk and also put my hat in the ring for these training days or workshop days that you're talking about.
Fantastic. Amazing.
Now, it sounds... I'm not aware of any other conference that has like a post-conference activity day, like you said. I'm curious what your thoughts are for that one.
Well, this is still TBD, but basically we had multiple ideas. In Israel, Friday, the 17th of May is Friday. So it's generally considered a half work day.
Okay.
The weekend in Israel is Friday and Saturday. So people work on Sunday is a regular day.
Right.
So Friday is like half a weekend day. And people generally don't work full days on Friday, if they work at all. So the ideas we had, we may have a hackathon that starts the evening before and lasts until the Friday afternoon. We are considering a C++ academic track, half day of academic related lectures. So this is still open, and we're open to ideas and still in discussions. But we do have that the venue at our is available to us for that extra half a day.
Right. So the dates are set, even though there's still a few things you're trying to figure out. The dates are set. You've got the venue. Everything's good to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is there
And
going
we're looking for speakers and sponsors, of course.
Oh, speakers and sponsors, of course. And is it, you said JFrog was involved in the original conversation. Are they sponsors, or is that still
yes,
to be?
They will become major sponsors.
Okay.
You said it's going to be 2 days, 2 tracks, I think. Is there any theme you have planned or would like to have with the tracks?
Well, this is our first conference, so essentially anything C++, C++
Okay.
language evolution, discussions, pros and cons, latest language features, best practices, anything typical. And of course, things related to development process like code analysis, testing, tools, libraries. There's a lot of hardware and software development in Israel, like embedded systems, real-time, and a lot of industries. So mobile platforms, games, VR, AR, the usual C++ applications, so machine learning, computer vision, drones, autonomous vehicles, low latency. I think there are a lot of people doing all of that in Israel. And so, yeah. And as I said, we're hoping to do an academic research track. So this is still something we're trying to formalize. But again, if it's interesting, do get in touch with us. We'll be happy to talk.
Well, it's I don't know what I expected one way or the other, but I just find it interesting that it sounds like basically anyone who cares about C++ is using C++ in Israel for those reasons that you would care about C++, for performance and real-time processing and whatever else, mobile applications.
Exactly. That's my aim. Basically, the aim, we want to get the community together because, and I don't think this is very specific to Israel. I think, C++ developers tend to be holed up in their cubicles.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I know that from Slack. You see people joining all the time, but many, even Slack has 10,000 members, which is incredible, I think. But the numbers of C++ developers that you read in the statistics, we're talking in the millions. So we're not even like thousands of percent, right? We're talking about a tiny fraction who actually watch, consume C++ content. And very often, even in the same town, these people don't necessarily know each other or meet each other. And it's great for the community to get them together, to get them talking to each other and meet each other and learn from each other. Because C++ is such a huge language. You can be like the world expert on template metaprogramming and know nothing about parallel programming.
Right.
This applies essentially to every aspect of the language and every industry. So, yeah, come to the conference and I pretty much guarantee you will learn something. And not just my esoteric list of C++ beasts.
So with 2 tracks over 2 days, I estimate you're looking for, 20 to 25 speakers, something like that?
Yeah, or something like that. Around, I think it's between 16 and 20 speakers.
Okay.
And again, not including the pre-conference workshop. And stuff.
Right.
But we'll probably have a lightning talk session as well, so hopefully we'll get more people to get visible and get talking and some interesting content.
And from the way you described it, it sounds like if people just want to come to Israel just to see Israel and would like to stop by your conference while they're there, so you said Tel Aviv's only about an hour from Jerusalem. That does make the country seem pretty compact.
It is very compact, yes. Israel, like the longest area distance you can measure in Israel is around 600 kilometers. So, and it's a very vertical country, so everything is close.
Right.
So you can go up from the north, where you have like a ski resort in the winter, a very short winter, to basically a tropical ocean at the Red Sea, and it takes like 5-hour drive, so 6-hour drive.
Wow.
And everything else is in the middle.
Yeah, I think it probably would take longer to drive east-west across the state of North Carolina.
Yes,
Most
probably.
likely. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was just looking at some numbers for the scale of things. Denver International Airport is like the 5th largest by land area airport. It's almost as big as the country of Liechtenstein, which granted is one of the smallest countries in Europe, but still, it's not the smallest country in Europe.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share with us before we let you go? It's a pretty exciting announcement with the conference and everything.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think that's the major thing. Do come to our website, get in touch with us if you have ideas. We are hoping to sponsor international speakers if they don't have a large company sponsoring them, similar to other small, like C++ on C and other conferences. So do get in touch. We're very flexible if we have ideas. So we're super excited, and should be an amazing event. So.
And it's super important that you just said that too, because I find over and over and over again, I'll be talking with people, even on Slack, who I feel like should know these things, that they'll be like, oh, I really wanted to speak at that conference, but I couldn't afford to fly there. Well, you know what? CppCon pays for the travel for people who don't have a company sponsoring them, like you're talking about doing. So yeah, anyone who's listening who's interested, make sure you send in your application or proposal.
Yeah, and even if you do have a company sponsoring you, that company might actually automatically be registered as a sponsor and get sponsor benefits. So we have a sponsorship program where if you sponsor just even 2 or 3 attendees, you're automatically registered as a sponsor, and you get all the benefits of being a sponsor.
Well, that sounds like huge. That really is a good way to encourage companies to pay for their employees to get their name out there too.
Yeah. I agree. Yes. This is we had a lot of discussions when we started this, because we didn't know anything about organizing events. So we had a lot of help from other people organizing events, from Phil Nash from C++ on C, and the folks who organized the NDC conferences, and Jens and John from CppCon and Meeting C++. So yeah, we're trying to learn from the best and do the best event, and the first C++ conference for C++ developers in Israel.
Sounds great.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks again for coming on the show today, Adi.
Thank you very much. I had a wonderful time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening in as we chat about C++. We'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. Please let us know if we're discussing the stuff you're interested in, or if you have a suggestion for a topic, we'd love to hear about that too. You can email all your thoughts to feedback@cppcast.com. We'd also appreciate if you can like CppCast on Facebook and follow CppCast on Twitter. You can also follow me at Rob W. Irving and Jason at Lefticus on Twitter. We'd also like to thank all our patrons who help support the show through Patreon. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/CppCast. And of course, you can find all that info and the show notes on the podcast website at cppcast.com. Theme music for this episode was provided by podcastthemes.com. Site at cppcast.com. Theme music for this episode was provided by podcastthemes.com.